Your wedding day marks a significant event in your life, but also requires strict planning and budgeting for it to be successful. The cost of a wedding in Toronto can be unexpected for those who are unprepared. In the past, couples believed their wedding would only cost an estimated $10,000 compared to the actual average cost of at least $40,000. So, how much should you actually set aside for your wedding budget? In this video, we will be going over various budgeting factors to help you better plan for your wedding with the help of some experienced planners.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Chan, and I am the owner and lead planner of Rebecca Chan Weddings and Events.
My name is Carmen, and I'm the owner and lead wedding planner at Devoted to You, Inc.
I've been in business for over a decade now, and I started out in the event world and transitioned to weddings when all of my friends got married, and the rest is history.
We've planned local and destination weddings in Toronto and worldwide, and we're happy to be here to share with you some wedding tips.
Speaking from your own experience, what is the average price of a wedding in Toronto?
In Toronto, in the sector that I work in, I deal with mainly higher end weddings and celebrations. I find that the average cost there typically is around $100,000. That's for about 100 guests, 130 guests, give or take.
The average price of a downtown Toronto wedding, I would say, is for 100 guests would be between $60,000 to $75,000. I mean, the pricing can vary depending on whether it's a weekday or weekend wedding. If you're downtown Toronto versus, in the suburbs, so the range can be quite large depending on your venue.
There's a lot of items in the budget that remain the same no matter how many guests you have, whether you have 10 or 100 people. Your photographer, your videographer, your band, your DJ, those are all set costs that don't really change. So when it comes to the average cost, it really depends on the preferences of the couple and what their tastes are, but generally I find most of my couples end up spending in and around that much, give or take.
How can a wedding planner help with budgeting?
So I always use this analogy with my clients. Planning a wedding is like buying a house. So you first look at how much you can afford to spend on your house, or which is now your wedding, and we look at how much things cost of a wedding in Toronto, and we start listing priorities. One of the key things that we do as planners is to keep our clients accountable to what they agreed on, because we're the one looking at their budget and help them spend wisely on their wedding.
What is something you find couples struggle the most with when planning their wedding?
One thing I find couples struggle the most with when planning their wedding is balancing what they want and what they dream of and how much it costs.
I think people struggle the most at the beginning is knowing how much a wedding costs. And so the first thing that we do is we educate our clients on the average cost of each vendor category, and just kind of looking at different quality of vendors, like why someone is charging more versus someone charging less, and just giving them the knowledge of understanding how much things cost. And that goes a long way when it comes to budgeting.
When it comes to budgeting and weddings, a lot of times couples are planning this for the first time and there's sticker shock. Like, wow, I didn't know that's how much things cost. And they go on Pinterest, they go on Instagram, they see these beautiful weddings, and almost always those beautiful weddings are the expensive weddings where there was no holds with kind of what was able to be done. So a lot of couples see something and they think that they can get it, but actually spending money on it and spending your hard-earned money, your own cash, not company's money, your personal money, that's a hard thing to do. And there's two people usually involved with the budgeting. It's a husband and the wife, and sometimes there's parents involved, which makes it even more complicated. So it's I find couples actually are struggling with that the most when it comes to planning the wedding.
Sticking to your budget is what I find couples are also find it challenging, because They look at a lot of inspiration sources like Pinterest and Instagram, and they want to spend money on like some of the details that might not be noticeable by your guests. So those are the areas that we as planners to keep reminding our clients to stay focused on what their priorities are.
What are the top wedding items couples can go without to save on costs?
Some items that couples can save on in the wedding include stationery. Stationery, if you're able to design it yourself or you have a friend who can design it and print it for you, that's a great area to DIY. In addition, you can also save on costs with the wedding cake and the favors. These are nice to have things, but most people will not remember what your wedding cake was like or your wedding favors. A lot of times they get thrown in the trash, or your wedding cake isn't even eaten at the end of the night. It's not going to be something your wedding will be remembered by, and most of the time the couple doesn't even get to try the wedding cake on the wedding night because they are so busy. So those are certainly things that I think can be scrapped if you are okay with it.
I think it comes to a number of factors. So transportation could be one area that couples can save on if the travel distance is short and you don't need a luxury limo to take you from point A to point B. But sometimes it is a necessity to have transportation arranged for your wedding day. Couples that don't care too much about wedding cakes or wedding favors are some of the areas where you can save on. I think those are it. Again, it depends on your priorities, but things that are less noticeable by your guests, are areas that I would recommend clients to cut back on.
What are the highest ticket price wedding items?
So on an average wedding, I would say the biggest ticket item is always usually the venue, because that's where you're spending your food and beverage and your rental cost to a venue, and that's typically around 50 to 55% of an average wedding.
Usually with my clients, flowers is the most expensive item in the budget line. And that's typically because, one, they have a bigger guest count, and the bigger guest count means that you have many tables. So not only do you need one centerpiece, you need like maybe 10 or 12 or 15 centerpieces. And not just centerpieces, you need something for the head table, you need something for the ceremony space. With flowers and centerpieces and floral design, it's not just going to a grocery store and putting some loose flowers in a jar and calling it a centerpiece. Usually these flowers are shipped from their farm. Maybe it comes from Costa Rica or Holland. It gets shipped over, it gets sent to the wholesaler ships it and sells it to the florist, and then the florist has to put them in the fridge, they have to prep it, they have to cut the thorns off of the roses, they have to open up, and then they get placed into these arrangements with a lot of skill. If you've never made a centerpiece before, you should, because it's actually very difficult to make it look really nice. And I know, because I've done it a couple times, and I will leave it to the professionals to do. I've had a client spend like $20,000 on just a hanging floral piece in their reception space, and an additional $30,000 on just their centerpieces for this wedding. It was 300 people and it was a big wedding, and they really wanted it to be a showstopper when it came to decor. Another big ticket item can be your music. I've had a couple splurge on a $30,000 band from Montreal. We had to pay for their accommodation, their travel, their meals, and boy, were they divas. It was really expensive. It was the same cost as the venue. Yeah, because the couple really cared about it, and you splurge on what you care about.
Of course, sometimes like sky's the limit when you want to upgrade your decor and other stuff, but I usually use that rule of thumb when it comes to biggest ticket item.
What advice can you give couples looking to budget their weddings themselves?
Do a lot of research, or even just hire a wedding planner to on an hourly basis to give you the guidance on how much things cost, and just educate yourselves to set up your budget for success. List out the things that are needs and versus wishes, and don't go too much down the path on Instagram and Pinterest. I mean, those are really, really good ideas, inspiration sources to, plan your wedding. But sometimes you just have to take a step back and look at what are the most important items and what is, the experience that you want to create for your guests. And you just have to focus on what's more important.
What are the top wedding items couples can splurge on?
Ooh, that one's tough. I think if you're on a limited budget, I would say splurge on one or two main items that you really care about. For some people, that's the look and the decor. For others, it's the photography. For other brides, it's maybe their dress. These are the things that are so personal, so it's really hard to say, what one thing you should splurge on. If you're able to splurge on more than one item, that's great. A lot of my couples end up splurging on decor, and they pay a lot of attention to photography and video as well, because those are the things that will last at the end of the day.
What was the most unique wedding you've ever planned?
Okay, so let me tell you a story. I've had a couple come to me and say, hey Rebecca, I want a big dramatic wedding that is not traditional, and I want it to be something out of the movies, kind of like Crazy Rich Asians type of drama. Can you do that for me? And as we started planning, the groom would be like, hey, I want live animals or live butterflies to land on my guests' shoulders as they walk in, and I was like, ooh, that might be a little challenging, because once you release butterflies, they're not going to land on people's shoulders. They're going to be like flies on the wall. They're not going to come back to you. And live animals at a venue usually are not allowed. So what we ended up doing for this couple was we created this urban jungle oasis. We rented out the Mocha Museum in downtown Toronto, which was basically a big concrete jungle, and we transformed this floor into this urban oasis of greenery and bold black furniture. And in the middle of this reception and ceremony was this 12-foot gold cage. We couldn't bring the live animals into the museum, but what we did do was we brought in burlesque and cabaret dancers, and we dressed them in sequin animal print and masks. So when the guests came in, they were greeted by these cabaret dancers inside the cage. And then the ceremony starts, the bride walks in, and actually before the bride walked in, we had fog creep in on the floor, and it was honestly such a memorable wedding. There's so many other beautiful details that I can't get into in a couple minutes, but it was very memorable and it was really unique. And it's because the couple trusted my vision, but also was really creative and risk-taking, and they didn't want classic. And they were okay with something that wasn't super timeless, but was a lot of fun. And was it memorable? Hell yeah, the couple and the guests had the best time ever.
There's so many of them to choose from, but if I have to pick one, I think this is beyond budget or beyond decoration. Is that I planned a wedding for twin sisters, and so they both get married on the same weekend, and with each of them having their own ceremony and a big joint reception together in Toronto.